Okay, so with that, let's kickstart the session. Right, so just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Lee Singh. I provide FX advisory to institutional clients. I'm also part of the team that's recognized by the Technical Analyst Awards as finalist for the best FX research. If you guys have any questions when you're watching the recording, right, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. So just a quick disclaimer, the information presented here is not to be treated as investment advice. It's for educational purposes only. So this is the setup that we will be covering for this. This is the agenda flow that we will be going through for this session, right? So first we will start off with our economic calendar, right? So it's important to note of the key upcoming events. This is especially if we have positions in this currencies, right? So for example, if you are taking a specific position on euro dollar, right, and there are key data being released, right? This is when we want to consider either sitting on the fence, right, or just waiting for the economic release, or if you're already holding on to the setup, then as much as possible, we try to trail our profits or even shift our stop losses to break even. Okay, and then we will move on to our trade setups. So for trade setups for today, I'll be taking a look at dollar index, euro dollar, as well as Aussie dollar, right? And if there's more time, we will go on to gold, right? So those are the setups that I want to take a look at. And if you guys have any other setups that you want me to review, right, do put them under the chat box. Okay, and throughout the session, right, we have the floor open to Q&A. So if you guys have any questions for TA, right, or any specific charts that you want us to look at, right, just put them under the chat. Okay, so let's take a look at our setup, right? And at the same time, we will also review the setup that was done last week. Okay, so let me just bring the economic calendar out. Okay, so you can see that these are the upcoming key events that we have for the week, right? So the main ones I filtered it according to the high and medium impact news, right? So the ones that we have here, right, would be mainly revolving around euro as well as dollar. And so for tonight, right, we have mainly euro and dollar, so we could be seeing some movement in this pairs. Okay, so other upcoming news releases would include your CPI flash estimate for the Eurozone, CAT's GDP data, as well as dollar, right? So Secretary Yellen, right, would speak, as well as ECB President Lagarde, right? So this would be the upcoming key events for the week. Okay, so let's take a look at dollar index for a start, right? So for dollar index, so you can see that prices are still hovering around this range. So let's start from our higher time frame first, right? So if we're on our monthly, you can see that prices are sitting on a key level. So if I were to just highlight this region, you can see that this was the previous support level. So prices set on this level here. Okay, and then if you go on to the weekly time frame or even the daily, you can see that coming into this zone, right? This is the current range that we have. So this is the resistance area we have over here, and this is the support, right? So this is that range that prices are hovering within. You can see with the previous price movement, right? So price came into this resistance area, failed to broke above it, and for that we can see that price started trending lower. So this is on the daily time frame. If we're on the 4 hours time frame, you can see that we highlighted this support zone previously, right, on the 4 hours time frame. So we saw that price came in, tapped into the support area, right? And if you look at what we have on the left, you can see that this was an area where price hesitated before we saw this strong bullish break above the previous resistance area here. Okay, so this was the support area. Right, let me just remove this retracement. Okay, so this retracement valid, right, because price went much higher, right? So in this case, you can see that this is the support region, right? And on this support level on the 4 hours, we highlighted this zone as the support area here, right? So you can see this region. If we go on to the 1 hour time frame, we probably see this a bit clearer, right? So at this area, right, on dollar index, you can see that price came in and currently it is sitting on this support region here. Right, so how we determine whether this is a support area, right? Looking at how price reacted off this region as a resistance, and then it broke above it, and right now it's currently sitting on this region as a support, right? But if you take a look at the latest price development here, you can see that coming into this zone, right, prices are still forming your bearish market structure, right? Still forming lower lows, lower highs, but right now we're seeing equal lows and highs. So basically, this is the last range that we have. You can see that just in terms of support resistance area, this is the high, right? So this is the last range that we have over here. Oops. Okay, so this is the last range that we have here. This is the high, right? So this is on the picture on a 1 hour time frame, which also shows that if price breaks above this level, right? So this would be what I call the upside confirmation. So if price breaks above this level, we could expect dollar index to push much higher, right? And the next high that we have would be the high on the 4 hours. Okay, so I'll just remove all this, right? So all this price move beyond it already, so we'll just leave it as that, right? So right now where we are, you can see that it's still forming bearish move down, lower lows, lower highs, right? So what we have here, this is the last high that we have, right? So ideally we want to see price go above this area, right? A strong break above this level before continuing to the upside. Okay, so this is the picture on the 1 hour time frame, right? So having identified this resistance zone, what we can also do, right, with this area is to try and see if there are any retracements and extensions level that line up with these two zones that we've highlighted, right? So for the sake of this time frame, right, we're on the lower time frame. I'll just put this in gray, right? So this would be different from the higher time frame zone colors. Right, so in this case, right, this is the area. So again, right, if we have that move down and this pullback, what we want to do is identify the move, right? So taking a retracement from high to low, we try and find, right, if there are any retracement levels that line up here. So when you take a retracement from high to low, you get the key levels. You can see the 38.2 retracement. So 38.2 retracement, right, lining up here. Okay, and then the next thing that we want to check, right, would be our extension level. So extensions are basically zigzag patterns, right? So in this case, what we want to do is to try and find if there are any zigzag patterns that are in line with this zone that we have found. Okay, so let's try and find if there are any zigzag patterns here. So in this case, right, you can see that this is the zigzag pattern. Right, so what we're trying to do is that we're trying to project if there are any levels that line up in this with this zone. Okay, so having done that, right, let's try and find out zigzag pattern. So this would be 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. Okay, and we have the 100% extension. You can see the 100% extension lining up here. This is the zigzag pattern, right? So what we use is that we will use the turning points of this extension level to project the high. So you can see the 100% extension here, right? So one thing I do want to highlight is that you can see that currently prices are still holding within or below this descending trend line as well, right? So it's best that we see a clear break above this resistance area as well as the descending trend line before it signals more upside. Okay, so once price breaks above this area, right, we can target the high on the 4 hours, this zone, right, as the next resistance. Okay. So we need a clear break above this level. This is our upside confirmation. Only on a break above this zone, right, will we see a further push up. Okay, so let's take a look at another setup that we have. Okay, so this is on dollar index, right? Let's take a look at euro dollar. And if you guys have any setups, right, or any chart requests, do put them under the tab as well. Okay, so this is on dollar index. Let's take a look at euro dollar. Okay, so euro dollar, right, previously we highlighted this zone. So you can see that right now prices are testing this area. Okay, so again, how we got this zone over here. Right, so again, from a higher time frame first. So if you're on the weekly or even the monthly, You can see over here, right? So this is the picture on the weekly time frame. So we highlighted this area as a resistance, and the reason why we highlighted it as a resistance is because of how price reacted here, right? So we saw a push up before price trended lower. So in this case, when price comes back into this area, we saw that rejection because price failed to close above this zone, right? And right now we're seeing a retest of this area here. Okay, so this is the picture on the higher time frame, right? What we can infer from here is that prices are potentially sitting on a resistance area, right? As to where are the specific reversals, right? We wouldn't know, right? So for this, we'll have to go on to the lower time frames for confirmation. Okay, so now that we are on the daily time frame, you can see on the daily, right, what we have over here in terms of the latest market structure. You can see that prices are forming your higher lows and higher highs, right, coming into this resistance area on the daily. And the daily, right, this is the last low that we have on the daily. Okay, so the picture on the daily, it's that if we are starting to see that resistance areas or supply areas start gaining control, right, then what we have over here, it's that price on this region itself, right, when resistance areas start gaining control, then we can actually take sell positions targeting this low on the daily. Okay, so that's the thought process for me, right? So this is the picture on the daily, right? And let's go to our 4 hours. Okay, so on the 4 hours time frame, you can see that prices from this low. So this is the last low that we have on the 4 hours. Once again, you can still see higher lows and higher highs, right? On the 4 hours, we have this low, price pushed up, form a new low. And right now, this is the last structure that we have, which is also our support level. Okay, so this is the picture on the 4 hours right here. So we have also highlighted this zone, right? So we highlighted this area in last week's session, and we highlighted this area as a possible resistance to watch for, right? So when price comes into this area, you have a low over here, right? So what we can infer from here is that if price comes into resistance area and on your lower time frame, right, let's say on your 15 minutes, prices start forming your lower lows and lower highs, what this suggests is that we can then play shorts targeting this low here. This will be take profit, the first take profit level, right? And this would be the next take profit level here. Okay, so just something to keep in mind, right? So right now, prices are in the resistance area, right? It's in this 4 hours resistance zone that we've highlighted. So apart from just highlighting this zone, right, we also found if there are any retracements. We found retracement levels, right? So in this case, back then prices were here. So right now, right, because price moved lower, so we would have to adjust the retracement level. So adjusting this level, you can see that this is the highest point. And this is the lowest point, right? So my retracement should be taken from the high to low here. So let's do that and see what we have, right? So taking a retracement from the high to low. Okay, so key ones, right? 78.6, 61.8. In this example, you can see, I'll just remove the pink ones, right? Because they are no longer valid. So you can see that in this zone itself, right, we have the 78.6 retracement lining up there. Another thing that we can also check, right, would be Fibonacci extension, so zigzag patterns, right, trying to see if there are any zigzag patterns. Okay, so in this case, what we have currently is that you can see that prices on the 1 hour time frame coming into this area, you can see that it is once again forming higher lows and higher highs, right? So you can see this very clearly here, right? So what we can see here is that price could come into a demand area here. I go down to the lower time frame, even on the 15 minutes, you can see, right? This is the last low that we have. Oops. Okay, you can see that this is the last low that we have here, right? Or if you want to look at supply demand areas, right? This is the area. This is the last low that we have over here, right? So which means that as long as price holds above this zone, right, we could still see more upside, right? So this would be our downside confirmation level, which means that if price comes into this area, it breaks below this area, right, then this suggests that there is a change in structure. Because if you were to just look back, right, just look back at this area where price pushed up into this H4 resistance, you can see that in this zone itself, right, there are higher lows and higher highs that are being formed. Okay, so that's one. Right, currently on the 15 minutes time frame, you are seeing that there is this change in structure, right? So price broke above this area, right? So you can see that price formed a new high and then it broke below here, right? So if you're on the 15 minutes, right, you're trading purely based on the 15 minutes, right? Price will come into this support area and then push back up into a resistance area here. So again, right, on the 15 minutes itself, right, for me, this is a possible resistance zone that we will want to look at. This resistance area here. Okay, but this is on the 15 minutes time frame. And likewise, right, if price pushes into this area, we're not taking any immediate positions, right? If price comes into this zone, again, you'll be seeing the same structure being formed, right? Like what we saw on the 15 minutes, you can see that when the 15 minutes pushes into this 4-hour zone that we have over here, right, that push up, the move up itself, right, is actually forming a bullish market structure. Okay, so the same thing would apply on the lower time frames, right? Given the fractal nature of markets, right? It's the same idea. So if price is to respect this zone, right? So if prices are to respect this area that we have over here, we will first see that change in structure happen on the lower time frame. Okay, so for me on the 15 minutes on euro dollar, right, this is still the demand area right now. So if price comes into this zone again, right, you can wait for a change in structure on the lower time frame before playing a short-term move up, targeting this. If not, right, if price comes into this zone, again, we want to wait for a change in structure before taking the shots. Okay, so these are zones for me right now. Right, on the higher time frame, you can see that prices are currently sitting on a 4 hours resistance over here, right? This area, right? But this is not a strong resistance area yet because we don't have any change of your market structure, right, on the lower time frame. Okay, so for me, right, if price comes into this zone and if it breaks below this area, right, we can play a short over here, targeting the support area. This is the first support area here, right? I will consider this zone because of how price reacted previously, right? We saw the reaction of this area as a resistance, this region, right? So again, price rejected before it pushes higher. So this is one for me. And the next support area would be this area here. So the low. Okay, so this is the downside confirmation, right? If we do see a bigger push down, then this is the area for us to watch. Okay, so this is the picture for me on euro dollar, right? Let's take a look at Aussie dollar. And if you guys have any other setups that you want us to take a look at as well, right, do put them under the questions chat. Okay, so let's take a look at Aussie dollar. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So you can see that on Aussie dollar, right, let's start with the higher time frame again. Okay, so on the higher time frame on Aussie dollar, right, prices are currently forming this, right? So let me just remove this and let's do a fresh analysis, right? So over here, you can see that prices are forming a lower low. It's forming bearish structure here. You can see lower lows and lower highs being formed, right? So that's one. And even if I were to put it in close or put it in line chart, you can see that if I were to mark out the highs and lows, right, then it becomes very clear that right now, right, prices are in a bearish market structure. So I just need to mark out the peak and troughs of this move, right? You can see the highs and lows. So it's forming subsequent lower lows and lower highs. Okay, so that's one, right? And one more thing to note is that prices are also sitting in a resistance area here. It's coming into this resistance zone that we have here. So you can see that if I extend this region across, right, that's basically an area where you can draw a horizontal line across very neatly and then divides this chart neatly across here. Right, so you can see that price came in, tested this region 3 times, and right now it's reversing off this zone. So this is the picture on the monthly time frame. Right, so on the weekly time frame, right, currently what we have is that we want to focus on the recent movements here. So I'd say this movement here, right? So you can see that nothing much on the weekly that's too different. Right, one thing I would like to highlight on the weekly is that we have for support region that prices might be potentially coming into, right, this area here, right, and it will be clearer on the daily, right? So on the daily time frame, you can see that this region, right, it's basically an area where price we saw a hesitation 3 times before price broke above it, represented by this strong bullish candle, right? So this bullish candle essentially shows that there's enough buying pressure, right, to sustain the upwards movement. So this for me is a support area, right? And again, if we were to put it in close, you can see once again, right, this area. So this zone was faced with a lot of resistance before price broke above it. Okay, so this is the area for me, right? This is the picture on the daily. Right now on the daily, it is still facing resistance again over here. Right, so again, if you were to just draw a horizontal line across, you can see that this area, it's divided neatly, right? Price came in, tested both the top and bottom here. Okay, so this for me is the resistance area that we have. This is the picture on the daily, right? If you go on to the 4 hours time frame, you can see on the 4 hours what we have currently. In the pullback area, we have price forming higher lows and higher highs, and then subsequently it broke structure, pulled back, right? So right now for me, right, on Aussie dollar, this is pointing to a more bearish picture. Okay, so ideally what we want to do is if we were to wait for a break above, a break below, right, and a retest, then this will also form your descending trend line. But let's work with what we have, right? So currently on the 4 hours, you can see that price broke below the last low here. And it's currently pulling back into the resistance area, right? This is the picture on the 4 hours. If you go to the 1 hour time frame, you can see again, right? Price came in, and right now you're seeing again bearish market structure form here, right? So prices forming your lower lows, lower highs in this region, right? So if I have to go back to the 4 hours time frame, you can see that this move itself, right? This is the resistance area that we have over here. So I'll consider anywhere within this zone, right? So you can see that this is the last push down and the move up, right? So this is the high and this is the low, where I want to use to find my Fibonacci retracement. So what I'm trying to do is trying to find if there are any retracement levels that line up with this zone over here, which is the high, right? This graphical area where we saw that rejection, that's one. And also separately, right, apart from just the high, right? One thing we also like to take note of, it's whether this region, it's that this region is also in line with your higher time frame zone, right? So recall that we have this weekly resistance in gray that we highlighted earlier. Okay, so let's do that, right? So Fibonacci retracement of the move from high to low. Okay, so 78.6, you can see that price went slightly beyond. I believe in this case, it probably went to the 88. Yep, 88.6 region, right? So over here, so this is one, right? You can also check for your Fibonacci extension. So this has zigzag patterns. Once again, right, if we want to use our Fibonacci extension, we need to identify 3 points as our turning point. So those are the 3 points. So let's do that, right? So we can see that this is 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. So open up these key levels, right? And right at the 78.6, you also have the 78.6 extension, and I'll put this in blue, right? So we can see that rejection of this level. Okay, so this is one, right? So now that we have the overall direction on the 4 hours, we also want to highlight potential support levels that we can take a look at. So you can see that for support on the 4 hours, right, it will be this area for me, right? You have an ascending trend line, you have a support level, and if you do a retracement of this whole move, right, this is the low and this is the high, you can see that there's probably a 78.6 retracement lining up here. So for those of you guys who are in for the earlier sessions, right, let me just change this, right? So this is 78.6. So for me, when there is a 78.6 retracement or 61.8 retracement with a trend line and demand area, right, this for me, it's an area where I want to watch price react. I want to watch for a break below this zone, below this low, to tell me that price could continue much lower. The reason for that is because if price comes into this area, right, it could always consolidate or even push back into the resistance area before that break. So when price comes into this zone, right, this is when we can go down to either our 1 hour or 15 minutes, right? But right now where we are, at least on the 15 minutes, or even if you want to go to the 30 minutes, right, it's the same idea, right? You can see that where we are currently, right, we have this zone. You can see this area here. Right, so this zone, there was a previous resistance area, turn support level, right? And right now price broke below it. So for me, this is one resistance area where we can take shots from. So in this case, right, again, you want to try and find if there are any levels that line up with this region. Okay, so Fibonacci retracement from high to low of this move. And you can see that it's in line with the 61.8 retracement. You also have our zigzag pattern, right? So this is the extension level, and using this 3 points here. So when you do that, right, you can see this is the extension level. Okay, so we have one retracement and extension level lining up here. So I think that when price comes into this zone, right, we can take shots from here, targeting this low that we have on the 4 hours. Okay, so this is the 4 hours low, right? Until price breaks below this ascending trend line, right? Then we could see a further drop. But for me, right now, this is just looking at how price react here. So once again, right, if price comes into this zone, right? If price comes into this area, if you want to keep for or wait for a lower time frame confirmation, right? The way to go with this is again go down to your lower time frame, right? On your 5 minutes, you can see that pushing into this area, there'll be higher lows and higher highs being formed. So if there's a respect of this zone, right, then we will first see that change in structure happen. Okay, so that's the picture for me on the 15 minutes, right? So price broke below the last low, the structure, right? So we should not be expecting price to go beyond this. If price goes above this level, right, this is when we're wrong, right? I want to get out of the position. Okay, so this is for me on Aussie dollar. Right, so let's take a look at gold as well. So you can see that currently gold prices, right? So it's again on the higher time frame, sitting on a potential resistance area here, the one in blue that we drew earlier. We saw that price came in sweep above this high, right? And if you go on to the daily time frame, you can see that it's currently consolidating around this region. And if we're on the 4 hours, you can see that right now, right, prices at least on the most recent move up, right, it's still forming higher lows and higher highs. Okay, so right now this is the last pullback that we have, right? So let me just remove this. Okay, so previously gold came into a support area here, I think. I came into this demand zone, right? But you can see that if you were to go down to the lower time frame, right, there isn't any respect of this zone. So let's just focus on this portion of the chart, right? So I always say that when price comes into a zone, right, we want to go on to the lower time frame for confirmation. So you can see that if you're on the 15 minutes time frame, right, you can see that coming into this blue zone that we have over here, right, you can just put it in close, put it in line chart. You can see that what we have essentially, right, mark out the highs and lows. So you can see that price consecutively, it forms successive lower lows and lower highs, right? So you have lower lows, lower highs being formed over here, right, coming into this zone. You can see that this is the last high, which broke below the low that we have, right? So if we want to wait for any pullback, right, we need price to break above this high before there's confirmation for a deeper pullback, right? Or the fact that it actually respects this area. But you can see in this case, right, it didn't happen, right? So right now where we are on the 4 hours. So if you go on to the 4 hours time frame, right, let me just remove all those areas. Okay, so currently on the 4 hours time frame, this is what we have, right? You can see that price came into this area. It came into a support region here, right? So this is where we saw the consolidation previously, and then price came and tapped in, and right now it's pushing higher. That's one, right? And this was the previous consolidation area as well, where we saw price consolidate, broke above, and then came and revisit this region. So right now, right, on the latest move up, we can see on the 4 hours or even on the 1 hour, right, there's once again bullish market structure seen. So this is the last leg that we have, right? So one question you want to ask yourself is that where is the support area, right, that we want to keep a lookout for? So right now where we are, you can see that there is this area, right? So this region here, clear resistance, turn support level. We saw price coming into this region, reject off that area before it pushes higher. So this is one, right? So with that, you can also, again, right, use your retracements to see if there are any levels that line up with this zone. Right, so in this example, because this is the move up, so you want to use your retracement starting from this low to high, right? And you can see that prices are currently sitting on the 61.8 retracement. So that's one, right? And then if you go to the lower time frame, right, let's say on the 15 minutes, you can see that right now, right, prices are just consolidating around this zone here, right? You don't have clear structure, right? Currently this low is being formed, but if you're on the 15 minutes, you can see again, lower lows, lower highs, right? And then right now prices are testing this last low. Okay, so if I put it in close, you can see, right, this is the high that we have. So prices seem to have broken above this high, but if you look at it in candles, right, you can see that it did not actually close above this high. So if I draw it in close, you can see, right, currently it's still testing this area. So again, right, what we want to wait for, if there's a respect of this demand area here, we want to wait for a bigger push up before it continues to the upside. Okay, so this is the picture for me on gold. You can see that currently sitting on a level, but right now on your lower time frame, right, it's not showing much over here. Right, so this is on gold. Right, so if price breaks below this zone, right, for me, this area, as long as it's holding above this leg, is still bullish, right? We could see more upside into the next region here, which is also in line with the resistance area here. Okay, so if price breaks above it, right, I think we could be expecting a bigger push up over here, right? Then again, this area, right, you can again do your retracements. In this case, right, this would be the highest point. Okay, so this would be the highest point here, and this would be the lowest point. Okay, so this area itself doesn't really line up with any retracement levels, right? So in this case, I'll just omit this, right? You can see 61.8 is slightly lower. So one thing you do want to consider is that if you're taking any profit targets, right, you want to consider putting your take profit just slightly below this area here, right? And again, right, you can see that this region, if you're to divide this chart neatly, right, it can actually separate the top and bottom, right? So if I were to put an enclosed draw horizontal line across, you can see that price respects this zone pretty neatly. Okay, so yeah, I hope this is clear. Right, so right now we do have to be slightly more careful because gold is also dollar denominated, right? So if we're expecting dollar index to be more bullish, right, then we could see, you know, either gold consolidate, or in this case, we need a break above this level for more upside. Okay, so I hope that this is clear so far, right? If you guys have any questions, right, do put them under the tab, right? If not, right, if you're looking for the schedule for the topics, right, you can just go to vantagemarkets.com/webinars, right? We do have the topics there. Okay, so if you guys have any questions as well regarding accounts, opening of accounts, right, please feel free to email us at support@vantagemarkets.com, right, for the schedule, the topics, as well as the sessions, right, the timings of the sessions. You can sign up for them at vantagemarkets.com. Okay, so if there are no other questions, right, that's all that we have for today. Okay, yep, so that's all that we have for today, right? Thanks everyone for staying with us till the end, right? Have a great day, and we will catch you guys again tomorrow.